Andrea Yates, 33-year-old former nurse from Houston, Texas, was found guilty of the death of her 5 children. Yates, who was diagnosed with many mental disorders, suffering from postpartum depression, psychosis, and bulimia. While self-harming and trying countless times to commit suicide, she began to get worse after giving birth to her children. She would have nervous breakdowns and continue her suicide attempts. She became so unstable to where she took the lives of her 5 children on June 20th, 2001 by drowning them in the bathtub. When taken to court, she was sentenced to life in prison and death for her crime. According to the article, Andrea Yates' case, Yates found not guilty by reasons of insanity. One of the jury foremen worded during a post-conference that she, quoted, needed help, and, although she's being treated, I think she's worse than she ever was before. I think she'll probably need treatment for the rest of her life, end quote, CNN 2007. Yates' sentence was eventually thrown out of the court with the help of a prosecution medical expert, and she was found not guilty by reasons of insanity plea. Therefore, I believe that psychologists testifying in courtrooms will help get patients who are really psychologically sick treatment while helping them avoid from being accused as criminals and murderers, and help them from not being sent to prison for the rest of their life. Before diving into why I believe that psychologists should testify in trials, I would like to start off briefly about the mentally ill, about how they are really dealt with in prisons and courts, and how not being given proper treatment can be harmful to them. It is obvious that they are not treated right in prisons. Someone who is mentally sick does not understand the difference between right and wrong, and it is not themselves who are in clear control of their mind. This may cause them to do dangerous things. When it comes to this situation, they are very vulnerable to the outside world and might do whatever they need to do, whatever they think is right to protect themselves. Their way of protection can be very different from what our views on protection looks like. Lastly, once someone who is taken in for their crime, they can automatically be sentenced to death without proper explanation. There have been many cases from countless years of people who are not properly helped and sentenced straight to prisons or death because there isn't enough evidence to prove their sickness. Just like Yates, who constantly harmed herself for the reasons that she cannot control, mentally ill patients can be extremely dangerous to oneself while in prison. Being left in solitude and given no treatment can lead to physical and psychological harm. Also, because of their vulnerability, they can be a risk of being physically, emotionally, psychologically, and sexually abused by other prisoners while in prison, because they can only do so much. Now that you understand the negative outcomes, I propose that psychologists and psychiatrists be present in court trials. This is because with their help, they can give a better explanation for their patients' reasons for what they did. Having information that they gathered up from their sessions and from research they have gathered can benefit their cases and give the jury and judges in the courtrooms the evidence they need to understand why they did what they did. According to the article, Insanity Defense Statistics, Problems with the NGI are Guilty but Mentally Ill by Kenneth B.C., quote, in some state studies, as many as 70% of the NGR defendants withdrew their plea when a state-appointed expert found them to be legally sane. And most of the rest, the state didn't contest the NGR claim. The defendant was declared incompetent to stand trial, or charges were dropped. High-profile NGR cases involving rich defendants with teams of experts may grab headlines and inflame the debate, but they are very rare. End quote, Chia. Secondly, as stated before, this can help keep them out of prisons and away from the death penalty. As selfish as it may seem, we live in a world that lives by the quote, if you can't fix it, get rid of it. Furthermore, taking someone to mental facilities can help provide needed treatment and with helping someone who is suffering from mental disorder learn self-control. This is the better idea instead of having someone go to jail and not receive help and feel like they're a hopeless case. To bring this to a close, Yates, to this day, is still given proper treatment for her illness and being properly taken care of. Even though she cannot fix the mistakes she's made and will soon come to realize what she has done, she has the protection and guidance that she needs instead of rotting away in solitude in a cell. According to her husband, Rusty Yates believes that even though what she did to her children, justice for the children is what he really wanted. During a walkout of a closing argument that Monday, after prosecutors showed the jury crime scene photos of his dead children, he quotes, "Who are they really serving? Do they think the children really wanted Andrea to be in prison? Do they think we, her family on either side, wants Andrea to be in prison? Is it of any public benefit from Andrea being in prison? Is she a danger to anyone?" He also stated, quote, "It is a miracle." CNN 2007. Therefore, I believe that psychiatrists and psychologists should testify in the courtroom will be beneficial because it will help give patients the treatment they really need. Secondly, help them avoid from being accused as murderers and criminals while being wrongly sent to prisons. This can provide a future where everyone is treated fairly, where the mentally ill are taken to mental hospitals to show signs of improvement and slowly learn their wrongs. Also, this conjures a mental picture of what psychologists really do and how having them in the court will benefit to someone who really needs help and away from prison. Thank you.